One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. And we are Marla and Dave. Every show, every week, every day. As a matter of fact, for our entire life, we're going to always remain Marla and Dave. I don't plan to change my name, so you can count on that.
Yes, and who knows? But for now, we're Marla and Dave. Just want to remind you to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. Support the show, support Mental Health Mondays. It allows us to bring you great content just like last week. We share some of our conversation with musician, bassist, composer, producer, and most importantly, our friend, Marcus Miller. We have the musician extraordinaire. Absolutely. We had the privilege of sitting down with Marcus on the Smooth Jazz Cruise, which is a Michael Lazaroff production earlier this year. And if you didn't get a chance to check out last week's episode, I would suggest that you go back and check it out. But this week, we will be sharing the rest of our conversation with Marcus. So sit back, relax. It's going to be a great conversation. Be right back.
When Dave and Marla get together.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our A Dollar Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. A dollar today keeps the stigma away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
You are back, Marla.
Speaking of music, that's pretty cool. How you just integrated the, you got your little.
That's right. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but hey, I'm back. As I'm sure Marla has already welcomed you guys. We had a great conversation with Marcus.
We did indeed.
Last week, and he was really touching on some subjects such as the fine line between genius and mental illness. Speaking specifically of back in the day, Bud Powell, who was the king of bebop pianist, and the struggles that he had, and even by the time toward the end, Charlie Parker had issues with his ability to actually show up and actually function as part of the band. He went on to talk about shock therapy and things like that, and so we're going to continue down that same line of conversation and follow that conversation with Marcus. Is there anything else you want to point out, Marla?
No, it's interesting because, one of the things that I was really intrigued and could not wait to talk to Marcus about because of his history in music was everyone is always on the fence about diagnosis and identifying a mental illness just versus a quirky artist behavior. And in this interview, you guys are going to have to stay tuned because I asked him a specific question about what he looks for, because he's also a producer. When it comes to the personality trait that other people think may be outlier, or other people may be extreme, or eclectic, or whatever you want to call it. But in that lies some of the best creators in all fields in the entire world. And so
he talked about not only the pressure of greatness, especially when some of these geniuses come to the planet, and it's a rare thing, but they're geniuses from the day that they're born. So the pressure of greatness for them starts when they start to demonstrate that greatness, and it's usually, and a lot of times, in childhood. So suddenly they live their lives with a whole different perspective to the world. And how, as a producer, Marcus was able to, and this is something that he's going to touch on, able to really focus in on that uniqueness and give space for greatness. Let's actually pick up the conversation right here with Marcus.
I always say that all of us are born little teapots. And little teapots go on the stove, and you turn the heat up, which I will call stress. And then it the steam blows off. So when you can't expel that steam of stress, then you fracture from the inside. And so I can only ask you even about the pressure and the stress of actually being a musician and performing and having to come back the next time and create magic every time that you put your hands on a bass or you write a song. Because Marcus, we're talking about you as a bass player, but I have to go a little bit deeper just for the average person.
Absolutely.
My goodness, you compose.
Absolutely.
You are all the things to the highest level in music, and it's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So you can speak to all of those.
The pressures.
Correct. The stress of that.
Because it's not just mental health doesn't just kind of mental imbalance doesn't just happen. You'll have a propensity towards it, and
That's
then
right.
your external influences, like situation with your parents, the situation you're born into. That'll kind of exacerbate it, make it worse. So I know several musicians who were just the most talented musicians you ever saw, but you combine the stress of being 14 or 15 years old, and people saying, "Man, this is a little genius here," and every time you touch your instrument, some genius got to come out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Expectation.
Right. That's stress. And then, to be a great musician is one thing. To be a great musician, as you know, Dave, in the structure of the music business, is a whole different thing.
Yeah, especially if your livelihood depends on it.
Yeah, man. Hey, man, your first album was a huge smash. We know you're gonna do it again, so we're gonna give you $1 million to do it again. And you're like, now, how did I do the first one?
Yeah, no, we tell the story literally. When we first got signed to Warner Brothers, Jim Ed Norman, the president of Warner Brothers, said, it's your first project. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Right.
We'll go in. If you sell 15, 20,000 albums, we'll consider it a success.
Yes.
And we'll maybe do another one.
Right.
Ended up selling 2 million. The conversation completely changed immediately. He
Yeah.
said, now you are part of their company's worldwide company's economy. And this is what we expect.
And we're depending on you to keep the books balanced.
The salaries in this building depend on you.
And see, your first album, Dave, you guys had been probably working on that music
Those are
for
songs
years.
we were singing forever.
For years.
Singing forever.
That second album is 18 months.
Exactly.
So you got to find inspiration. You got to find life that inspires you.
And you're trying to come up to the standard that you didn't even know you were setting.
And so many artists, it's called the sophomore jinx, right?
Exactly.
So many artists are, what was I thinking? What was I eating? You know what I mean? It's really stressful. So add a propensity towards mental illness to that scenario, to that equation. And then, you get guys flipping out. They can't take it.
Yeah, so when you put on your producer's hat, and you're working with somebody who has like little quirkiness or something like that, what do you do to make sure that you can pull the best musically out of that person as an artist, and to mitigate some of that quirkiness, or do you try to mitigate some of that?
You don't want to mitigate it too much. What I've done with certain artists, there was one artist I worked with who daily he woke up at 4 p.m.
Wow.
Right? And he went through the night you know, and so
But was that your schedule?
So the
was
sessions
that
had
your
to start.
sleep schedule?
It wasn't at the time, but it had to become my sleep schedule.
Yeah.
So the sessions would start at midnight, you know, and I think it's because his head was quiet at those hours. You know, there's a lot going on during the day that doesn't happen at night. You know, you can drive the streets and it's not a lot coming at you, and I think he performed well in those hours. You know, it was tough on me. You
Right,
know what I
I'm
mean?
sure.
But that's what we had to do. You know, other times, you know, you have guys who are never satisfied with their performance.
Yeah.
You know, or women who are never satisfied with their performance.
Yeah.
And you know, you can try going, no, look, that second take
It's
you
amazing.
did was it. That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one. The more you push,
Yeah.
the more they're going to resist. You know what I mean?
So my question as well, Marcus, is we call it brain different. We've tried to throw certain words out. Like we Dave and I now, based on our experience with our children, we no longer say crazy. But
I just say brain different.
We say
We
brain
say
different.
brain different.
There's brain balanced people and there's brain different people.
Yeah.
So that's how we look at that. Do you look for, are you attracted to, as a producer, the brain different entertainer on some level, or have you seen that because you realize that you almost can recognize the genius in the difference before you put it to test? Like,
Man, I hate to say it, but if the musician is too nice, I'm going, this ain't never going to work. You know what I mean?
Is so powerful because it says two things. You could look at that negative or positive. And the positive way I look at that is everybody has a place somewhere if they just can be accepted for who they are. And I'll tell you when we come back, when we open, what I feel is the goal to manage mental balance for everybody, regardless of your difference.
Well, I mean, that's going to be clearly Marlon's you're going to break down and give us the magic antidote for overall balance and universal balance, so to speak. That's pretty good. But, you know, one of the things that I really appreciate, like you're saying, that Marcus was saying, is he had to learn to allow for everyone's uniqueness, especially when it comes to people who are geniuses and just great individuals, so to speak, that, you know, he has been privileged to actually shepherd through some of these projects in his career. Stay tuned. Great conversation with Marcus. We'll be right back.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
All right. Also called affective disorders, mood disorders may involve feeling sad all the time, losing interest in important parts of life, fluctuating between extreme happiness and extreme sadness.
Other symptoms may be irritability, changes in appetite or weight, changes in sleep patterns, and difficulty concentrating.
The most common mood disorders are depression, bipolar disorder, seasonal affective disorder, also called SAD, or self-harm. An estimated 21.4% of U.S. adults experience any mood disorder at some time in their lives.
If you or anyone you know are experiencing any of these symptoms, distorted moods or emotional states, please seek professional help. At Mental Health Mondays, we ask and encourage that life can be better. This message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
David, I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
All right, we're back. Now, Marla, you said you were going to give us the universal secret to balance mental and emotional balance. And now remember that you ended last week's segment.
I know.
With the great, and you started off this week's segment in our conversation with Marcus as a reminder from what you said last week, we were talking about teapots. So you have great analogies. So what is the secret to universal balance from your perspective, as you have deduced from this conversation with Marcus?
What I've deduced is what we don't know in life and what is different than what we are scares us. That's just human nature. Mm-hmm. And accepting someone for who they are, barring that you're accepting something that is damaging to someone else, abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, those things must be managed. But a personality difference is not something, it's something we should work to understand and accept, because some of the greatest things in life come from our unique perspectives and our unique views in life. So if Take Six, bringing it back to music, only did what everybody else did in a barbershop quartet, there wouldn't be the genius of a 6-man a cappella group that will never be able to be duplicated on the earth. Because you're different. Your voices are different. The blend is different. If everybody said, "Oh, this doesn't sound like everything else we've heard," then what do we have? We don't go to something else that is brilliant because it's different than what I am used to hearing.
Well, when we left off, I think where we were with Marcus, before he went to the break, I think he was really talking essentially about every artist and every great artist really needing to operate from the edge versus just kind of holding back and trying to make sure that they're universally accepted. They need to actually go ahead and push the limits of their art.
He actually said, with a direct ask, if an artist that he's working with is too nice, he's not down.
Let's pick up the conversation with Marcus right there.
Do you look for, are you attracted to, as a producer, the brain different entertainer on some level, or have you seen that because you realize that you almost can recognize the genius in the difference before you put it to test? Like,
man, I hate to say it, but if the musician is too nice, I'm going, this ain't never gonna work. You know what I mean? I look for, like, I thrive on the quirkiness. Wow. You know, I search it. I don't even search it out. I just end up, you know.
It is what it is.
Miles, you know, he had his quirks. Luther had his quirks. David Sanborn has his quirks. All these great artists, you know, they have their thing, you know, which is what makes them who they are. So you know, you just try to keep it like some borders on it,
right.
You know, so it doesn't go too far.
On a spectrum of work, able to work with it.
Now I'm gonna ask just a fan question. What do you think that your specific talent is that you're bringing to the table to work with such a variety of artists? And, you know, they all look up to you as this is the guy who's going to put it together.
I think, man, that's one of the
most... Is that more of a musical thing, or is that a personality thing?
Is it a Marcus thing? Is it Marcus,
it's
Marcus
both,
magic?
you know, it's both. Like, I know, I learned to speak different languages with different artists. You know, Wayne Shorter, you know, he speaks purely from inspiration, you know. So you say, Wayne, how you doing, man? Oh, man, I got to get to Mars and find some more notes, you know. Everybody's like, you know. Or like, you know, when we did an orchestral album, and I'm sitting there in front of you know, 50 musicians, and Wayne says, I'd like to address the orchestra first, you know. And he's making references to movies. You know when Lana Turner walks in, you know, old movies, when she does this is what this piece is about, and they're like, what? You know, and I'm saying, you know,
it's not painting the right picture.
But
it's his picture.
It's his picture, yeah. And if you just take the time to honor what he's saying and to get in his head, it all makes sense. Yeah. I mean, in his particular case, it all makes sense. It's just such colorful expressions of what he's thinking.
Wow.
You
so
know?
in a case like that, then do you try to explain that picture to the orchestra?
I said, let's start at letter A and play.
Exactly.
Let's play. So let me tell you what happened.
It's your job to get it.
So let me tell you what happened. They're looking at him like, you know, like quizzical, like, who is this guy? You know, and we take our first break, and the orchestra goes into the, you know, the lobby to have coffee and stuff. And one guy who played the French horn comes into the studio to listen to the playback because I want to hear what it sounds like. And he goes, oh, I get it. This is all way over our heads. This guy's a genius, isn't he? And I said, yeah, you know. They thought he was some cat who, you know, off the street, you know, who found some money to do an orchestra. No, this is Wayne Shorter. And I said, no, this is Wayne Shorter. He's one of the most important composers in jazz.
So when you're working with those great artists, was there ever a time when an argument might break out, when you feel like this is what it needs to be, and the artist is like, no, hell no, we're gonna do it like this?
Right. No, because in the end, it's their name on the album. You know what I mean? So if it comes to that, and plus, you know, I have the technology to maybe show the guy two versions, you know, because you don't want to do a head-on.
Right.
And this is with people who are totally balanced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have a disagreement with somebody. You know, you don't want to ever put somebody in a position where they got to go, okay, you're right and I'm wrong. That's never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So you make your point and then let it rest, you know, and then hopefully they'll come back next day. You know, I've been thinking about your point, you know what I mean? Let's try it this way too.
So we're adding to your list that now that you are also a musical psychologist. It's
hey
done.
man, let me tell
To
you.
be a producer, I guess you would have to.
You're a musical psychologist.
To be a band leader, to be a producer, anywhere where you're having to get people to work
perform,
together,
yes.
and perform,
And this is another question. I'm sorry to be taken over like this, but
don't you spend a lot of time already with Marcus?
I've noticed with as many times as we've seen you perform, it seems like you're always searching for young guys. And then next thing you know, I see them on the road with their own bands. And it's like, man, this guy is like planting seeds.
He's a kingmaker.
And just watering them and just letting them go.
He's the king of the kingmaker.
Is that purposeful or is that?
It wasn't purposeful. I got to a point right after we went to Japan for those 7 days of jazz. What year? Do you remember what year that was, Dave? That was a long time ago. Was it 97?
I would assume this is 23. So I would say it might have been about 94, something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Anyway, right about that time, you know, I'd had a band together for many years, you know, and I said,
Poogie
all those guys, you know, and I said,
Poogie.
I gotta switch it up, you know, because it started to feel like the audience knew what was gonna happen and everybody knew what was gonna happen, you know, and you want to always have the element of surprise and growth too. So I found a saxophone player, Alex Hahn, at Berkeley. You know, I went to do a week at Berkeley, and he was fantastic. And I said, "Hey, man, introduce me to some of you, some of your community." You know, and then I got into this thing, man. It was very cool to see these guys who were still hungry and still, you know, just developing their voices. And man, I got one guy who's like one of the top composers in movie business, Chris Bowers. And I got another guy who's the musical director for the Stephen Colbert show. You know what I mean? All ex-band members. You know what I mean? And it's really cool to see, you know.
Well, I know that you guys have so much that you're doing. I know you guys are busy. I cannot let this end without asking you this one question. From then to now, how has the conversation about mental illness in music changed?
To be honest, I think that back when I was first in the music business and I was encountering people with what we'll call mental illness, people loved the way they played. People didn't put a lot of stock in what they said. They said, look, you know, just put them behind the piano. It'll be good.
Let them go.
Nowadays, because everybody has access to social media and get there, say whatever they want to say, you know, Kanye at a certain point in time, you know what I mean? People just listen to his music, you know what I mean? But disregard other stuff he says. But now, because of people like Donald Trump, you know what I mean, who clearly, you know, are thinking differently and ignoring certain things and amplifying other things, people are saying, look, you can be successful like that. And you realize there are people in the country, in the world, who want to hear that kind of other
alternative
thinking. You know, they want to hear that, you know, and they relate to it. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden, people listen to what Kanye has to say. And you read in the comments and say, no, listen, if you listen carefully, and it's true, if you listen carefully, there's a strong intellect.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Of course. Matter of fact, I always say that a lot of times when people have a mental balance issue where they're struggling with that balance, they have to be extremely intelligent.
Their filters
because
dissolve.
They have to try to matriculate in both worlds.
They got to speak two languages.
What not to say, what to say, and sometimes they can't control it. But they've been doing it for so long, much longer than they've actually been successful. So they've been doing this and walking that line for quite some time.
And their filters definitely dissolve at some point because they're accessing parts of their brain that we can't even get over there.
Yeah, think of all the important discoveries, inventions that are part of our everyday life, you know. I bet you there's a majority of those people who didn't interface with society that well.
Right.
You know.
Well, again, thank you so much for taking some time with this man. We
My
love
pleasure.
you.
Thank you,
brother. Man,
For sure.
Yes.
Our sensei.
Wait a minute. I'll do it.
Oh
Thank
man.
you, Mr. Sensei.
Thank you, man.
All right.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
guys.
Marcus.
All right. Thank you.
Boom.
And we'll be right back.
All right, are we gonna hit our poll question?
I think it's time to hit the poll question. I wasn't quite sure, but Marla, what was the poll question last week?
Well, the poll question last week, Dave, was which of these 3 mental illnesses is the most difficult to treat? It was depression, ADHD, and BPD. And our guest,
did Tony answer this question for us?
Yes, he did.
He did, and he answered it correctly.
Got it right.
Yes.
Because he in his brain he thought it meant boys play daily, but it's not. It's a mental health issue called borderline personality disorder. But nonetheless, he got it right.
Our sweetie's going to take another swing this week. The poll question for this week is what percentage of state prisoners, and this is for California, have a recent history of a mental health condition? 11%, 17%, or 24%, Tony? What do you think?
I mean, just because of the conditions, I would think it would be more than that, but I'm going to go with the 24 just because I feel like it might even be higher.
That's a good idea. Actually, these numbers were pre-pandemic, so I'm sure they're higher. We just haven't gotten that data yet.
Well, Tony, we'll definitely see you next week so you can find out whether you are going to keep raising your batting average or whether you'll be striking out.
I always do a strike.
There you go. All right, we'll get back to the conversation. All right, just like that, we are back. Wow, that conversation. First of all, it was such an honor to sit down with somebody. And Marcus is the funny thing is about being a great artist is he seems like he's a really nice guy to me.
Which we talked about that in our conversation. You know, we couldn't air everything, but you know, the gift of being able to be that much of a genius and still have balance, because you know, I'm going to say this, regardless of your mental health differences, because society requires a certain interaction to be able to be productive, it is best. It's a blessing. It's a double blessing to have those gifts and to be able to maintain a balanced mentality or a mental health wellness, or even find the tools to keep it together. Because other than that, for example, he talked about Kanye. Let's just hit that right quick. On the Kanye tip, you know, it's no doubt that Kanye is one of the most gifted musicians and writers that in our lifetime. However, his rhetoric is so off-putting and so offensive that it limits your ability
at
to
times.
Be able to, yeah, well, I'm just saying,
times when he's not in balance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so it would be beneficial, as it was beneficial, for all the relationships he was able to build while in balance. So for Marcus to have this amount of legendary life in music, and with all that he's seen and done, and with all of his personal genius, and to stay balanced, I think that it's a beautiful thing. It's a gift.
Yeah, well, he did comment on the fact that, you know, back in the day, we used to actually look to the artist for the art. And now they've become really social influencers, so to speak, not just social media influencers, but influencers of all society. But I love the fact that he was telling us of how he just kind of fell into artists like Alex Hahn, Chris Bowers, and the MD for the Colbert Show, all of his ex-band members who have just taken off to do their own thing. It speaks to his ability to sort of actually corral and shepherd new talent, which is it's amazing. Which is why he is the great Marcus Miller, the great producer, musician, and artist that he is, and composer. Well, again, everybody, it was amazing. We had a great time, not only just on the cruise, and we'll be doing that cruise again next week. We have Janet Craig. She's an actress, a writer, and a director. You don't want to miss that one. If you missed the first episode where we were talking with Marcus last week, bounce back, check that out after you disconnect from here.
I'll say this: you don't want to miss any episode of Mental Health Monday, and please, 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 this is a new year. It's flying by fast. We can't do this without you. So remember, every time you see us, every time you hear us independently on our social media or on Mental Health Monday right here, text GIVE to 818-698. Dave, finish it up.
1021.
1021, and just commit $1 today. It could be $5, whatever it is that you can do. Every single solitary penny is going to continue to help us bring you this show and keep everything going so we can all work towards better mental health.
See you guys next week.
Bye.